this speech, and that's going to be how trade with multinational corporations can change the behavior of rebel groups, and I guess in particular the behavior of Hamas. But before that, I'm going to do some rebuttal to the case we heard from first opposition. A couple of things. Claim number one. Hamas are just going to use any money they make from multinational trade to buy guns and to get more powerful. Firstly, not true. As has been pointed out, Hamas spends quite a lot of money on humanitarian aid. That's why they're often more popular than Fatah, because people see more money getting to them in the form of, investment in infrastructure and things like that. And secondly, Hamas is always going to be able to get money for guns. They're always going to have some sort of illicit revenue streams. They're always going to be able to continue the fight. There are plenty of other ways in which the incentive to increase their money will affect the behavior in a good way, which I'm going to show you. The next thing they say is, well, rebel groups are often divisive, and not everyone supports them or whatever. We think that's a claim that's not a distinct claim about rebel groups. Plenty of states are also divisive in the sense that people disagree with them, particularly the states in which rebel groups exist. And we think, therefore, that this isn't an argument against trading with rebel groups. Next thing they say is CEOs just want money in response to my point of information. We think, yeah, they do, but it's a little bit more nuanced than that, and we're going to show you in our substantive why that means they're going to be likely to want good behavior from rebel groups. The next claim is, well, they don't hire the local population. It's pointed out in a point of information that's the only natural resource Gaza has. He then asks, well, what's so unique about Gaza? Why aren't they just going to hire everyone in China and do all their work there? Well, for one thing, Gaza is right beside a massive market, Israel. So there's an example of a reason why there might be an incentive to hire people in Gaza, because you don't have to pay to bring the stuff you build there over from China. Next, they say, well, they're not going to. Oh yeah, there's going to be way more rebel groups because you become a rebel group so that you can trade with a multinational corporation. Like, our prop isn't that you have to be a rebel group in order to trade with a multinational corporation. It's just that you're allowed to trade with a multinational corporation if you're a rebel group. And in any case, we don't think that the creation of the idea that there might be more rebel groups under this prop is necessarily a bad thing if this policy were extended throughout the world. Some rebels are better than the governments they rebel against. I think the rebels who fight the Janjaweed in Sudan are good rebels, for example. So we want some analysis as to why rebels bad, states good, beyond this assumption. And the last thing he gives is this argument that, well, if we don't want to destroy their culture, no thank you, we don't want to destroy their culture by going in and spending money. I mean, the culture of being poor, I just don't understand what that argument's meant to be. So my arguments. How this changes the behavior of rebel groups. And I'm going to go through sort of 4 areas here. The first and most obvious one is that this leads to more economic activity in the country you're trading in this instance in Gaza. There's poverty everywhere in these places. The introduction of trade means people can pay to put food in their children's plates. It means people don't feel constantly humiliated by the fact that they have no prospects in life and nothing they can do to help their families. This obviously is likely to reduce the extent to which people are radicalized. And something which I think should have been brought up at some point before in this debate, it's just a good thing to do to bring people out of poverty, right? I think there's something of a moral imperative not to have people die starving in Gaza. Point number 2, no thank you. Less arbitrary rule by rebel groups. What does this mean? Because they're correct when they say that CEOs of multinational corporations want to make money. But they also think about what sorts of patterns of behavior are likely to lead to their getting more money. One important consideration here is, can you trust the people that you're dealing with not to take everything you own next year? Can you trust people not to renege on their contracts? Can you trust people not to arrest all your workers? What does this mean? It means that for rebel groups who control particular areas, in this instance Hamas and Gaza, there's a massive incentive, if they are indeed so reliant on the money from multinational corporations, to have clearer, more transparent processes so that multinational companies can look at them and take them into account in deciding whether or not to invest. B, larger respect for property and individual rights so that the workers of multinational corporations and the profits of multinational corporations are more secure. And C, a tendency not to provoke further violence when they can at all avoid it. Because again, the profits of multinational corporations are likely to be threatened if there's I'll take in a second, or not, if there's a further conflict between Israel and Gaza. So these are all really good incentives from their point of view. Madam.
I'm sorry, but the money will go to buying arms because Hamas needs to have enough money, enough arms, in order to secure his...
Okay, the arguments I've just given work even if all the money only goes to buying arms. Moreover, this model isn't just about trading with Hamas, it's about trading in the area Hamas controls. We may well be trading with people who aren't Hamas and giving them money. And also, without any trading, currently Hamas are the people who distribute all the humanitarian aid. If anything, this reduces the grip they have on people if there's an effect there at all. So, number 3, within subpoint number 3 in my extension, another way in which this affects rebel groups. It creates a larger incentive not to want to capture the state. In particular, from the point of view of Hamas, it means wiping out the state of Israel is less important from a financial point of view to their project. What does this mean? No, thank you. If the only way you can trade with multinational corporations is to be the people who run the state as opposed to rebels, then the only way in which you're going to be able to make massive profits is by taking control of the state. So a massive financial incentive for all-out war until the state of Israel is wiped out. There may well be other ideological incentives for some people in Hamas to want to wipe out the state of Israel anyway. I'm going to suggest that not every single Hamas fighter is a, like, died to the world, whatever the phrase is a massive, massive ideologue. I'm going to suggest that some people who live in Gaza take economic incentives into account when making their decisions, and I'm going to suggest that those people will have far less of an incentive to want to wipe out Israel if they think that they can get money without doing that. So this reduces the incentive for rebel groups to capture the state, particularly Hamas. So D, subpoint 4, leverage. We think, again, as dependence with trade with multinational companies grows, this gives us being like the West or democracies or whoever, this gives us an important way in which we can influence their behavior for the better. Why? Because when your money is reliant on multinational corporations, you now have a much stronger interest in international trade deals, which govern the operation of multinational corporations, and with the regulatory regimes of the countries within which these companies are based. So, the countries who influence regulatory regimes and international trade deals have a way in which to influence the people who rely on the money that comes from the multinational corporations who are influenced by those things. Possibly that sentence was slightly difficult to follow. I'm not sure I followed it myself. But the point is fairly clear.